You might have a dry period, and we know going in as farmers and as a company that we may have to destroy it, and we did. We were glad to do that because it's part of the program, and we understand the responsibility that we take when we sign that MOU. Every year I go through a criminal background check. Every year I have to GPS all my fields. Those coordinates are given to the state police. They're loaded into their system. They fly over my fields. They know whether I'm a hemp field or a marijuana field. They have the ability and right to come to my farm anytime they want to and pull samples. They have landed in my field a couple of times because they just want to check. You know, there might be a wild plant growing here and they want to make you welcome. We've never had an issue. As part of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable that I serve as president of, we purposely go out of our way to include law enforcement in everything we do. We've met with the DEA, FDA, USDA. We met with the Presidential Task Force on Marijuana Regulation in Kentucky. We have continuous meetings with Kentucky State Police. We're trying to do the right thing. I'm a farmer. I don't want to lose my farm. I don't want to lose my business. I just want to make a living. My company today in Kentucky has invested over $25 million into hemp production and research. My chairman from Australia is a guy named Barry Lambert, who grew up on a dairy farm, made a lot of money in business, took 3 companies public. His daughter has Dravet syndrome, and when she was 2 years old, they had given her all the medicine they could possibly give her and all the doctors, and they told the family that if she didn't stop having seizures, that she would be brain dead or die within a year. They happened to read a story about a hemp product, oil, CBD, or cannabinoids, full spectrum hemp oil, brought it back to Australia, gave it to Caitlin, the granddaughter, and the next day she quit having seizures. My chairman, Barry Lambert, wanted to know why a hemp plant extract naturally occurring in a plant caused his granddaughter to quit having seizures. He in turn invested $34 million of his own money into Sydney University to do research on cannabis. He met my partner Phil Warner and flew to the United States and met me in Kentucky. And after 2 days of him interrogating me about who I was, they agreed to put $4.5 million into my program and farming operation in Kentucky. So after that, he agreed to make another donation to the Lambert Center at Thomas Jefferson University. And so at Philadelphia and Sydney University, we're doing research on the entire hemp plant, food, fiber, and what we like to call medicinal. We know it's not a medicine because it's not approved by the DEA, and we never make health claims. But we have $40 million of research behind what we're doing as a company. So on my farm today, you're welcome to come anytime you want to. I'm 30 minutes south of Cincinnati. I have 15 full-time employees, 40 part-time employees, and we have employees all over the world. The base of our operation is in Kentucky, and everything we do centers around Kentucky. When you ask a lot of questions about different products. As a farmer, I plant seed for 3 different crops. I plant some for food, which is seed is considered food. I get oil or protein from the seed. I plant some from fiber. When I plant for fiber, my intention is to get as much biomass per acre as I can. This past year, I had hemp that was 22 feet tall. I also grow some for full spectrum hemp oil extraction. The entire process is natural. It's on my farm. We have a state-of-the-art processing facility. You're welcome to come and see it anytime you want to. What I do almost every day of the year from the time I get out of bed till the time I go to sleep is educate people on the difference between hemp and marijuana, and I try to let people know that this is the crop of the future. It's our opinion, if this is done right, that hemp in the United States and Indiana and Kentucky especially will be bigger than corn in my lifetime. The reason hemp was outlawed in the 1930s was because hemp was too good of a crop. It was the #1 crop in the world for over 3,000 years. In the early 1900s, it was outlawed because of patents that large companies had on other things that were non-hemp, such as nylon and wood-based products. So it took us from the 1930s until 2014 to get back in the hemp business. And I believe with the science that's available and the technology is available now, hemp's here to stay. So one thing I'd like to show you real quick, if your staff has it up, there's a lot of discussion about CBD. CBD is just one cannabinoid. There's over 130 known cannabinoids in the hemp plant. Each one does something differently. The reason CBD got a lot of buzz is because a little girl named Charlotte Figge in Colorado took hemp, and the CBD was believed to stop her from having seizures. The science now says, and what our company does, is full spectrum hemp oil extraction. In my Nanda hemp products, there's over 10 cannabinoids known, and we know that each one of them does something differently. So when we talk about fiber, you've had a lot of questions about car parts and automobile parts. When I grow fiber, my intention is to get as many tons per acre as I can. Right now, I'm averaging about 4 tons of dry fiber per acre. When people get excited because I went to Europe and visited a farm that was raising 4,000 acres of hemp for fiber on one farm. All of his fiber was going for Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Porsche, for door panels, dashboards, anywhere fiberglass or metal's used, they use hemp now because it's renewable, it's lighter weight, and it's more durable. So that sounded really good, but when we did the economics, and so the guy's name's Albert Dunn, he was going to build our facility on my farm. It sounded good, and Toyota has the largest Toyota plant in North America 15 miles from my farm. They're interested in buying fiber. Well, they only want 25% of the total crop. You have to find another use for the other 75%. Most people now in Europe and China and other places are using it for pet bedding or hempcrete. All those things are great, but you're competing against, for pet bedding, you're competing against sawdust, bag sawdust. So it's a commodity. My partners went to Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia and arranged a program that would use the herd, the center of the stalk, which is the other 75%. And so if you don't mind, I'll have them turn on a video and you all can see what this other 75% of the plant looks like. And this is the future of what fiber is going to do for clothing.
New technology is disrupting the world of textiles and materials. The most promising is hemp, as it grows sustainably and by nature's design has a host of performance properties. But we're taking it a step beyond. By carbonizing a hemp bioproduct, we unlock a host of advanced technologies. Intelligent, adaptive, and evolutionary fiber made possible by hemp black. New technologies are ushering in a new era of smart and functional performance apparel, footwear, and fashion. With its intelligent design and functionality, Hemp Black will drive the next generation of advanced textiles.
So that's a lot to comprehend in that video. You can show it again if you want to. The key to hemp that changes the dynamics of textiles and clothing is you can take hemp, which once it's run through our process, conducts current, it's antimicrobial and it's antibacterial. We're talking to people like Johnson & Johnson, U.S. military, Patagonia, Under Armour, Nike, and other people. You can take a small percentage of our hemp, put it in any woven material, and at that point it conducts current, and it would be antimicrobial or antibacterial. Our first generation of clothing from Hemp Black should be available in April. So to bring all this full circle, what we've done in Kentucky is we've passed multiple pieces of legislation to get us to where we are today. And in Washington, the 2014 Farm Bill gave us permission to do it. The senator mentioned some language in 2016 that said that hemp was not legal. Right after that, in 2016, Senator McConnell and others inserted language in the omnibus spending bill that said that hemp could be researched, processed, manufactured, sold in all 50 states, and that we could transport it anywhere we wanted to. and that the DEA, FD, and others, government agencies, couldn't spend any money interfering with us as a hemp grower as long as we were within 0.3 THC. So in Washington today, the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, which I mentioned before, has two pieces of legislation. One in the House is the 2017 Industrial Hemp Farming Act introduced by Congressman James Comer from Kentucky that says that hemp will be permanently removed from the Schedule I drug list. There's a companion bill that's being written right now that we've seen the draft language that Senator McConnell, Senator Rand Paul, and Senator Wyden of Oregon will introduce. It's believed by us that some form of legislation will pass in 2018 because the Farm Bill reauthorization starts in 2018. So with that, I'll try to answer any questions you have. I know you have a lot of questions.
Questions for the witness? Senator Lysing, Senator Thomas.
Just real quick, since you've actually grown it and you have experience, what are you using for a herbicide if you have 1,000 acres? Because you're not out there plucking weeds by hand.
It's called trial and error. You learn as you go. Take what you have available to you and you figure it out.
So in other words, you don't worry if it's been approved for use on hemp?
We don't use any chemicals on hemp. None whatsoever.
How do you control weeds?
You learn how to use the crop rotation in previous crops and some burn down chemicals before you plant it to eliminate the weed. How to plant it at the right depth, fast.
So you're using a burn down, and then you're saying that with the growth of the hemp, that there are no weeds at all?
Yeah, I wouldn't encourage any farmer to just run out and start throwing hemp on the field unless they talk to someone such as myself about what to do and what not to do, because I've had some crops I've planted 4 times, but we're getting pretty good at it. On my farm alone, we've planted 1,000 acres and we've harvested 996.
On the 996 acres that you harvested, did you have prearranged contracts for all of those in order to have a home for the product?
I serve as Director of Global Production for EcoFiber, a parent company. I will not contract with the farmer unless the money's in the bank to pay the farmer for the crop before he plants it.
So on your 1,000 acres or 996 acres that you harvested?
That's over a 4-year period.
Okay, that wasn't at one crop.
No, this past year we had about 600 acres planted. This upcoming year we'll have somewhere between 800 and 1,000 acres planted.
Okay, so but did you have a place to market it?
Yes, everyone by law in Kentucky under our program has to have a contract from a approved processor before they get approved for their MOU. So I have to sign a new MOU every year in the state of Kentucky as a grower. As a processor, I sign one every 3 years. We're looking at language now to make good growers who've been in the system for multiple years. We're looking at giving them a 3-year window. And let me say one other thing. There was a little bit of misinformation from Commissioner Ryan Quarles that you had mentioned before. Mm-hmm. The commissioner is not in the details every day of the hemp program like I would be or his staff. There is no such thing as blending fields for testing for THC. We have to have every single field approved, mapped, and the Kentucky Department of Agriculture sends a representative to pull random samples out of my field 2 weeks before harvest. If that test comes back high in THC, there's a retest done by them. If that retest comes back high again, I have to destroy that material. So someone from the department comes to each and every one of your fields and takes a specific sample. Every year. And the $500,000 in costs that I heard, is that for the testing annually? Is that correct? I don't know the exact numbers, but as an individual company, we have our own testing facilities on site. We can do it for $10 a test. The Department of Agriculture has increased the fees this year. As a processor, I think the size of me this year as our company is about $3,000. As a grower, every grower pays $400. Per field? Per farmer. Per farmer. Yeah. But if I want to make changes to my MOU anytime during the year, I pay a sizable penalty for the paperwork. We're in the process of trying to create a system that's self-sustaining. It doesn't cost the taxpayers anything. But it's not self-sustaining at this point. I can't answer that because I haven't seen their budget. But we've had fees in place to protect the taxpayers. Okay. And I would tell you, Representative Lucas, and I thank him for inviting me here today, is Kentucky will open our doors and arms to Indiana or any other state that's truly interested in 0.3 THC. If you're interested in anything else, you can probably come, but I'm not going to tell you everything that I'm telling you as a farmer who wants to grow hemp.
So in the crop year 2017, what would you say the acreage was that was actually growing in 2017 in Kentucky?
I think 4,000 acres were planted, probably 3,500 were harvested.
Okay, so that's close to what?
In 2018, there's been 12,000 acres approved, but we have until next week to verify all of our information on our current MOUs.
Okay, so you're really stepping it up from last year to this year. And as part of your law, people have to be able to be contracted.
Exactly.
So the farmer in that sense is protected.
As a company, I have to write a letter to a grower that says I'm going to buy all their production and I'm going to provide genetics or whatever. I have to be an approved processor in the state of Kentucky to be able to write that letter for them to be able to get approved.
And then just one last thing, I know you're talking about the future legislation that's been filed. You obviously think there's a need for that to stay in compliance with federal law because currently you're really not?
No, that's not accurate. Currently under federal law, there's a carve out for hemp producers growing hemp in an approved state under the Farm Bill as long as they stay below 0.3 THC. You couple the 2014 Farm Bill with the 2016 Omnibus Spending Bill, it gives me permission to grow, process, research, extract, sell any hemp product anywhere in the United States.
Okay.
Now, the DEA will give opinion letters based on some attorneys' opinions that hemp is still Schedule 1.
Right.
It's not if you're under the Farm Bill in a state that's approved to grow it and you stay below 0.3. Now, if I have a field that goes to 0.4 or I get caught with finished product above 0.3, I face consequences. And I can tell you, our company's invested $25 million and we don't want to face it.
Well, I would assume that's true. And I have heard that the DEA has a different opinion than the Farm Bill. So thank you.
Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, thank you for a very informative testimony. I had to ask a question about equipment, and maybe you said it doesn't take specialized equipment for this here.
Depends on what you're growing it for. If you're growing it for seed for food, you can do it with a regular combine and a draper head or a soybean head.
Okay.
If you're doing it for fiber, there's mowing equipment available in Indiana, Ohio, Illinois right now. Silage production, there's big square balers that are available that can be used. And for the full spectrum hemp oil extraction process, what we've discovered in Kentucky is tobacco model works very, very well. So if I look at the state of Indiana as a farmer, I would think that the farmers in the south along the river would be excited about growing hemp for extracting oil because they're used to small crops with high margins. I would think of the rest of your state kind of from Purdue up to be more in the business of fiber and food production. Mm-hmm. There was one question asked about being behind the 8 ball, being too late. Does Kentucky have an advantage? There's no advantage in this business because we don't know where this business is headed. Okay, as a farmer, I can't afford to haul bulk material very far from my farm. So when we talk about putting a fiber mill in Kentucky, we put it in a spot and we draw a 75-mile radius around it, and that's as far as a farmer would ever deliver the product. Mm-hmm. 50 miles is better, 10 miles is great. Same deal with any other hemp production anywhere. It's hard to pick this farm product up and carry it anywhere. There will be cooperatives or elevators or somebody.
Well, I know the guys I talked to said that the farmer that I spoke with and talked to the other ones said they would be willing to go as far as St. Louis or Louisville if they had to.
Depends on what you're hauling that for.
Okay, then, and how many processors are there in Kentucky now? Just yours?
Steve, do you know how many's approved? 60. About 60 processors and I think 240 growers for 12,000 acres.
Okay.
But there's millions of dollars being spent in Kentucky on hemp processing capacity.
Okay.
as Steve is from a company, Gincana, he serves as secretary of the roundtable with me. In the beginning, we all had to be totally vertically integrated because that was the only way we could get in business. Moving forward, people are going to specialize in what they're good at. And people who have genetics, people who are growers, people who are processors, people who are manufacturers. That's all taking place in Kentucky right now.
Okay, last question for you. How does that crop compare to and crops right now, like corn, beans, and things like that? Financially, how's that rank?
Right now, fiber and seed production are a little bit better than corn and soybeans. CBD / full spectrum hemp oil production is very similar to tobacco, even a little bit better than tobacco. But it's like any other crop. If you give the farmers the right to grow it, we'll overproduce to a point to correct the market, and we're going to do that. You know, you hear big prices today. Well, next year those prices could be pretty low because if it's too good to be true, a farmer's going to grow it.
I really do appreciate your answers. I know. I guess maybe you in Kentucky went through what we're going through here too, trying to get this.
I was sitting back here just laughing because in 2013, 2014, I've been through this entire process. I've testified all over the world. I recently testified in Australia in front of Parliament. It's the same situation worldwide. It's just people don't understand it because there's a lot of confusion about what it is and what's marijuana. Some marijuana advocates are clouding the picture because they're throwing out false claims.
Well, I do believe we've got our britches hung up on our own pitchfork. But I want to thank you again for what you've explained to everybody in this room. Thank you so much.
Senator Stoops?
So you have 12,000 acres be in production this year. What do you estimate the gross revenue from 12,000 acres would be?
Gross revenue for the farmer. First of all, it won't all get planted because there's not enough seed available, genetics available to plant that many acres. See, in Kentucky, we sign up in October, November to grow a crop that doesn't start until June or July, June or July the next year. So a lot of it won't get planted, but gross revenue probably be $3,000 times 12,000 acres. But it won't all be for medicinal production. Some of it will be for seed production, but that's just an average ballpark. I can't tell you exactly. I'm just in simple ag terms. That's the way I look at it.
All right. Now when do they actually plant the seed?
It depends on what you're using it for. On my farm, and I'm just telling you my experience, on our farm, if I'm planting for fiber, I plant it in May. If I plant it for seed, I plant it in June because I don't want it to get too tall because of my equipment. And if I'm planting for CBD oil type production, I can plant it anywhere from June, July, or last year we planted some in August.
No kidding. How does hemp compare to corn? So what we have in this state again is we're with changing climate, we're getting wet. It's extremely wet spring and early summer, and then we get drought. So and I think that's a problem with a lot of crops. I'm just wondering how hemp handles something like that.
Actually, hemp loves a wet start and a dry finish. So it's almost exactly. So in all my travels around the world, they tell me there's 2 sweet spots in the world to grow hemp. The Midwest, Kentucky especially, that's always pointed out. Kentucky.
But not Indiana?
You're close enough. And then the other sweet spot's somewhere in China. But those supposedly, because of climate, latitude, rainfall, and soil types, are supposed to be the best. There's a reason why Kentucky, southern Indiana, was always the #1 hemp producing region in the United States. I think it has something to do with rainfall and limestone, I think.
Yeah, right. And that's a concern moving forward because I think corn production is going to fall, I would guess, especially with drought situations at that time of year.
The only problem with corn and beans is it's a commodity. It's a world commodity. Mm-hmm. You're at the mercy of the Board of Trade.
All right. One of my concerns is with hemp, and you were talking about genetics, has there been any movement by any corporation to try to nail down seed production for agricultural hemp to say, well, this is the only seed you can grow, and we're the ones that produce it, and we're the ones that's going to sell it?
I think
Or is it a little more open than that?
it's quite open at this point, but I will tell you from my travels that every major agriculture company in the world has got an eye on hemp right now.
Right.
Even the biggest companies you can imagine are looking to see what their role is in hemp moving forward.
Okay, but there's no monopoly on seed production.
It's going to take a long time because the interesting fact is USDA houses seed of almost every crop grown in the world. They destroyed hemp genetics in the USDA seed bank years ago. So we're a ways away from a monopoly in the seed business because we're just figuring out. My partners bred for fiber and food for 20 years before they figured out that CBD was going to be popular.
Right. Yeah, I thought it's interesting. Didn't the founding fathers say that every land grant you had a percentage of hemp on it?
Yeah, I was reading a little bit of history. In 1619, hemp was it was the currency. Before tobacco, it was hemp. You know, people say tobacco built this country in Jamestown, and I would say it probably did. Before you had tobacco, you had hemp. Hemp was used for everything for thousands of years. The Constitution was written on hemp. The first American flags was hemp. All the clothing in the military was hemp.
Well, we don't want to be anti-constitutional in this state. If it's good enough for the Constitution, I think it's good enough for us.
Senator Houchin, and then Senator Dell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you grow any other crops besides hemp?
Yeah, me and my brothers, in a partnership, we grow about 200 acres of tobacco, run about 250 cows. One brother fattens steers on a feedlot. We raise hay, cattle, corn, tobacco, soybeans, wheat.
But your primary operation is the growth of hemp, is that accurate?
In 2017, the majority of our income came from tobacco.
Okay.
In 2018, the majority of our income will come from hemp.
Okay. I heard you testify about the Agricultural Act of 2014 and the Omnibus Bill in 2016 and how that gives the authority to grow hemp in states that allow for that. The Agricultural Act is explicit. It states that industrial hemp, it only allows universities and state departments of agriculture to grow and cultivate industrial hemp if it is grown for purposes of research and under an agricultural pilot program or other agricultural or economic research. And the growing or cultivating of industrial hemp is allowed under the laws of that state in which such an institution of higher education or State Department of Agriculture is located and such research occurs. So there's nothing in the Agricultural Act of 2014 that allows for individual farmers to grow hemp for cash crop. Is that accurate?
No.
Okay. So nothing in
Can I explain to you?
well, let me ask an additional question.
Let him answer the first one first, please. Let him answer the first question.
All right, so the 2014 Farm Bill said state departments of agriculture or universities. When we sued the DEA in court, we let them know that agriculture departments and universities don't farm. So through a contractual agreement called an MOU, the Kentucky Department of Agriculture is the administrator of the program for the 2014 Farm Bill. They have the authority to contract or through a memorandum of understanding, allow farmers in those states to grow product.
Right.
So I grow as a partner with the Department of Agriculture and the universities.
Right. And as I'm continuing through, and this is information from the National Conference of State Legislators, there was a bill in 2015 that I don't believe became law that would have allowed farmers to produce and cultivate industrial hemp. And in the 34 states that have passed legislation related to industrial hemp, some of those states establishing those programs do still require either a change in federal law to be legal or a waiver from the DEA. And it sounds like Kentucky, at least, and their Department of Agriculture has an agreement with the DEA. Is that correct?
Yes, and to bring seed into our state, we have to get a DEA import permit approved by the DEA before genetics from anywhere.
So if Indiana were going to pass this piece of legislation, we would also have to have a waiver from the,
I would encourage you all to pass something that says we're going to follow Kentucky law.
but the answer to my question is if Indiana passes law, we would still require a waiver from the DEA at this point to allow for the growth and cultivation and sale of industrial hemp for other purposes besides for research only.
Yeah, we have an agreement between the Kentucky Department of Agriculture and the DEA, and as a grower company processor, I have to have approval from the DEA to import.
So you have approval from the DEA to do what you do.
Exactly.
If we pass this law in Indiana and we don't get a waiver from the DEA, would we be violating federal law?
We'll sue them.
But would we be violating federal law?
Not based on the Farm Bill. As long as you're following all current law with the 2014 Farm Omnibus Spending Bill, you would not be breaking any law. As long as your growers under the Department of Agriculture in Indiana stay below 0.3 THC.
One other question. So in 2016, and you're talking about the 2016 Omnibus Bill, the USDA, the DEA, the DOJ, and the Food and Drug Administration, as well as HHS, all issued a joint statement about the Farm Bill, Section 7606 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, stating that the growth and cultivation of industrial hemp may only take place in accordance with an agricultural pilot program to study the growth, cultivation, and marketing of hemp as established by a state Department of Agriculture or state agency responsible for agriculture in a state where the production of industrial hemp is otherwise legal. It sounds to me, based on reading, and there's more to this, but it sounds to me that the waiver process would still be required. And if you're having to operate under a waiver in the state of Kentucky, it doesn't sound like anything federally would allow for additional use of industrial hemp outside of research purposes.
That's not accurate. That's an opinion based on attorneys at the DEA, not carry the weight of law.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, Senator Delph.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. When you've had a destroy product because it exceeded the 0.3 level, okay. You mentioned the 12,000 by 30,000, it was 12,000 acres, $30,000.
$3,000.
3,000?
Did
Okay.
I say 30? I'm sorry. Did I say 30?
I wrote it down wrong.
If it was that good, I wouldn't be sitting here right now.
Well, I did the calculation and it was, yeah, and when I did it, it was $360 million and I was like, wow. So I wrote it down wrong. Has law enforcement, has prosecutors, attorneys council in Kentucky been involved in this?
Yes. They serve. Law enforcement serves on the hemp commission with me as a member. They're very involved in the process. We've brought in the other companies, as long as myself, have brought in prosecuting attorneys, judges, U.S. attorneys, anybody you can imagine. My farm is open for anybody who's interested in this business. Now, I can't do daily tours every 15 minutes, but if you organize a trip, we'll show you that process. And, you know, it's been a work in progress. It still is. We've had 2 people in the state of Kentucky prosecuted for growing marijuana in a hemp field. And so in 5 years, that's not too bad, 2 people.
So you wouldn't have a problem with law enforcement or prosecutors being part of the commission along with our agricultural folks?
No, I would just encourage you to make sure that everybody's educated about what it is you're talking about, and people let their guard down a little bit before they come in the meeting. Because I've walked in meetings and people think I'm the devil until I talk and then explain it to them, and then we become very good friends.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.